there is a term also that first order, second order and third order landform. Sometimes you may have simply this question also, discuss the third order landforms of peninsular plateau, let us say. So, firstly we need to understand that for the first time Salisbury was the geographer who classified the landform or who gave ordering of landforms on the basis of the magnitude and the process of its origin. He first suggested the first order landform, in which he put the broader aspects, the continents and the oceans. That means largest feature purely a product of endogenic forces. The forces which derive their energy from the interior of the earth. The second is the second order landform. Landform superimposed over the first order landform. That means the major features which is visible over the continents and the oceans are the second order landforms. The best example over the continents we have the mountains, the plains and the plateaus. Over the oceans, such landforms include mid-oceanic ridges, trenches, sea mounts, etc. These are the second order landforms are a product of the combination of the both endogenic and exogenic forces. Some plains may be endogenetic in nature. Most of the plains in fact will be exogenetic in nature. Mountains may be purely exogenetic in nature, endogenetic in nature. The plateaus may be both endogenic and exogenic in nature. Mid-oceanic ridges purely endogenic mid-oceanic ridges. The landforms formed over the surface of the oceans, generally on the divergent plate boundary. If you would have read the basics of NCERT, you would have come to know these terms. Trenches are the deeper part of the oceans. Sea mounts are basically the mountains found under the sea water. They are called sea mounts. They are basically product of a combination of both endogenic and exogenic forces. Here also endogenic plays a much bigger role as compared to the exogenic forces. The third is the third order landforms. Now, here we have relatively smaller features which are superimposed over the second order landform. Now various features like V-shaped valley, gorges, waterfalls, etc. Over the continental areas, various type of flood plains and landforms produced through many erosional agents. All the erosional, for example, glaciers, rivers, coastal areas, all will be a source of third order landforms. Now, purely exogenic in nature. The origin is associated with the external forces, the forces which derive their energy from the atmosphere or from the sun, exogenic forces. Rarely found over the oceans. So, it is largely a feature of the continental areas, because exogenetic forces are more profound, more intense, are more conspicuously present over the continents than over the oceans. However, the coastal area, if you look at the marginal part, that is a product of the oceanic water, but they are again very less as compared to when we see in the continental areas. Second order. The whole continent, the oceanic surface will be first order. So, abyssal plain, sea mounts, guyads, all these sea mounts, abyssal hills, all will be a part of the first order, second order landform. So, whenever we have a question about second order landform, like for example, discuss the second order landforms in India. So, what are the terms we will be discussing? River valleys. So, second order landform, mountains and plateaus. So, in mountain, what would you talk about? No, if it is about the describe the second order feature in the country, in India. So, what you are going to talk about? How they are not asking you the origin of those. Discuss the second order landforms. So, when you are supposed to discuss, you have to discuss the varieties. Very often we miss important points. When you are explaining mountains, you are supposed to explain with respect to fold mountain, block mountain, if it is at all present volcanic mountain or circumdenuded mountain. Exactly. That way you are supposed to discuss. For example, India as a country is more diverse and one of the most diverse country of the world in terms of physiography also, where we have the second order landforms, almost all types of landforms. So, when you talk about mountains, talk about Himalayas, talk about Aravallis, talk about Vindhya and Satpura, and mention that we do not have conspicuous presence of volcanic mountains or volcanic peaks. That is, discuss about the second order landforms. Then nature of a bit, if you have a scope about the foldings, once we discuss that in geography, that will be easy. So, this is then come to plateau. So, we have constructive plateau, we have destructive plateau as well, right. We do not have intermountain plateau. So, जो है उसकी बात करेंगे, जो नहीं है उसकी भी बात करेंगे, जो है उसको थोड़ा डिटेल में बात करेंगे. Whichever the Ladakh plateau, yes, but of intermountain plateau, of Tibetan plateau nature or of Patagonia nature. The smaller features, that ways we have intermountain valleys also, Kashmir Valley.
You mentioned the second order, the
Yeah, passing reference can be given only. For example, when you talk about Himalayas, so it contains various V-shaped valley, I-shaped valley gorges, but you don't need to explain that. You don't need to talk about the Indus gorges, the deepest one on the surface of the earth. When you're talking about that, the fold mountain, the intensity of folding, one of the largest and the highest mountain on the surface of the earth is Himalaya. Then when you are talking about the plateaus, we have Deccan Lava Plateau. Then we have Archean Rocks Plateau, where long denudation has produced very low hills like features like Chota Nagpur Plateau, Bastar Plateau and all. Then a bit of constructive plateau in Himalayan regions like Ladakh Plateau. But obviously bigger size continental plateau in terms of especially constructive intermountain is absent in the country. Then you talk about the plains. Then we have the desert plain, the riverine plain, the coastal plains. So if the third order is asked, let's say suppose discuss the third order landforms of third order features of Ganga plain. So what we are supposed to talk about?
Deposition of arable soil, we can talk about.
Third order features of Ganga plain. Huh? We don't have, that is Ganga plain. Himalaya is not Ganga plain. So when you talk about Ganga plain means it is.
Direction of flow direction of flow of rivers meanders.
Come on. The question is about landform, not about rivers. Very often we commit such mistakes, right? The question is about landform, not about rivers. Third order, Oxbow lakes will be a part. Then most of the rivers makes natural levees. You might have heard about Bhabhar, Tarai, Bhangar, Khadar. That will be the natural levees, flood plains, the delta region, right? Then you have the cones, intercones. So those feature will be a part of third order plain. Discuss the third order features, third order landforms of peninsular plateau. Then you can talk about rift valley of Narmada and Tapi, some of the waterfalls, then small ranges which are created because of exogenetic forces like Harishchandra, Ajanta range, then river valleys, then Chambal gorge you can talk about. Getting that point? So ऐसा नहीं, कई बार very often you have good amount of information. The only problem is that we don't run our mind, we don't move our mind, we don't think in lateral direction, and very often we block our mind. We do have good amount of information, but very often we don't try it. So whenever you have the question, first you understand it, not only in the discussion time, but whenever you think about, even when you are walking, whenever you are thinking, try think laterally and try think deeper and improve your imagination capacity. The question is about landforms, and obviously we start sometimes thinking about the rivers. So the question is not about reasoned account, the reasoned account of landforms of northern plain. Then you can talk about landform and reasons behind it. Then you can talk about the river flow, the volume, the discharge, the speed, the kinetic energy and all. It's not about that. The question is discuss the third order features of on the northern plain. So simply you have to discuss third order features. Sometimes just a passing reference, like for example, the Himalayan region, the peripheral areas have deposition of large gravels, boulders and big cobbles. So that deposits are called bhabbars. So bhabbar when you can explain. So in that you can talk about the flow of river a bit, but you cannot start with river flow. Getting that? When the question is not about reasoned account, whenever the question is about reasoned account, present a reasoned account of various types of landforms in India. So then you have to account the landforms, you have to talk about the landforms together with the reason behind it. Like Western Ghat will also be a third order landform because it is produced because of the subsidence, faulting.
So there are certain landforms which eventually have submerged, or which are today a part of the ocean part. So how do we define it as a part due to endogenic forces or exogenic?
That is, faulting is associated with endogenic forces. Because something has happened somewhere in the land under the earth which has caused subsidence. It is very obvious to understand. For example, let's imagine that magma is coming here, and magma is basically fueled by radiogenic heat. When the radioactive minerals are present slightly in the interior, that's what you call as thermosphere. So let's say magma is being fueled by radiogenic heat, and it has started carving out its own way, and much before it has reached on at the top, it has created a hole, right? The moment it is creating a hole, a central part or whatever part it is affecting, that area will be delineated, demarcated. Right? If I break this, and if I am pushing it, before it breaks, it will develop crack, right? So even before there is a faulting, this area will be delineated, demarcated. Now the moment this portion, this is blocked, or for example the rising magma has stopped, maybe because of radioactive minerals get exhausted, it is no more supplying energy to that rising column of magma. So what will happen? That will subside. So the faulting is a faulting or upliftment, that's what you call epirogenic movement, is endogenetic in nature. So let's talk about the geomorphic process, the process which shapes the configuration of the land. Yeah.
Why can't we consider what we say that Western Ghats into second order?
Yeah, it can be second order also. But the feature within the Western Ghat is so small, very often, is a linear one. Western Ghat, when we talk about the faulting and the whole of Arabian Sea, which has been basically on the continental side. Western part of India was much bigger before the collision of Himalaya. So India and Africa was joined together at the time of Pangaea and all, right? So that western flank got subsided. So this subsidence is basically second order, this will be the third order. This is just basically a linear portion or the joining where the faulting has taken place. So this is basically the second order landform. This will be the third order landform.
Sir, suppose there is a mention in the Western Ghats portion, we mention like a Western Ghats hai. So we considering it as the third order.
Third order, both second order also. Whenever you are writing, some of the landforms will be common to both second order and landform, third order landform. Western Ghat will be such. Western Ghat technically, west of Western Ghat is the second order landform, which has faulted, but it is not visible since it is under the ocean water. And the portion is just a joining point at the end mark where the faulting has taken place. So not much has happened with this as far as endogenetic force is concerned. That's why it appears scarp. That's why when we say Western Ghat, it is a scarp. A scarp is a landform where one side is gentle, another side is very steep and produced because of faulting or vertical movement. Remember, this type of slope may be there in the fold mountain also, monoclinal fold, when the fold has one side inclined, but that will be produced because of the compressive forces. The nature will be different. So, the geomorphic process is the process which shapes the land. Any landform, if you see on the surface of the earth, or you can imagine, that is basically a product of endogenetic and exogenetic forces. Whichever landform you can recall, that will be a combined action of endogenetic and exogenetic forces. The process is called geomorphic process and the resultant is called earth movement. Now, here there is a difference. If the question is asked about discuss the earth movement or discuss the movement of the earth, is there any difference in these two questions? Discuss the types of earth movement and discuss the types of movement of the earth. Well, how it is different. rotation. Movement of earth means movement of earth as a single entity, and earth movement means movement of part of earth within earth itself. That is earth movement. नहीं समझ में आ रहा है? हाँ? मुझे भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा. Meaning same कैसे? Movement of the earth, that means earth is a single entity. Earth movement, earth flow, mud flow, landslide. Landslide is also a movement. So here earth means part of earth. Earth movement and movement of the earth.
Can we consider it as a systematic arrangement?
No, it's not that. It has nothing to do with that systematic arrangement, because earth rotates. So let's say, so earth rotates as a single entity. Earth revolves is a single entity. When we talk about movement of the earth, that means earth as an entity, earth as an object, earth as a piece, earth as a heavenly body. When we talk about earth movement, that means movement of the part of the earth within itself. Like for example, plate tectonics, landslides, for any such movement, debris flow, when the sediments are flowing with the rivers or with the winds or with the glaciers, all will be a part of earth movement, not the movement of the earth. Hope we are clear. So the process is called geomorphic process and the resultant is called earth movement. And that geomorphic process is divided into endogenetic forces and exogenetic forces or exogenic. The forces which derive their energy from the interior of the earth. The one which derive their energy from the atmosphere. The source is sun. Basically, these forces creates land. That's why they are called creative forces. They create land and they are creative forces. They are basically destroys land. That's why destructive forces. They are destructive forces, and a combination of that will produce the landforms, the shapes, the landforms. Exogenetic is further divided into slow movement, or when we talk about geomorphic process, the process will be slow process. When we talk about earth movement, we'll talk about slow movement and sudden movement. In sudden we include earthquake and volcanoes or volcanism. What is the difference in term volcano and volcanism? Volcanism is a process and volcano is the opening of the name. Volcano is the mouth through which the magma comes out, especially in the case of central eruption. So that is earthquake and volcanism. Among the slow movement we have epirogenic. and orogenic. Epeirogenic means continent building. Orogenic means mountain building. The forces which forms the mountain, especially the fold mountain. If you look at this force is basically the compressive forces. The movement is horizontal. The movement is tangential. Here in the continent building, the movement is faults or along the faults. The movement is vertical. The movement is along the radius of the earth, hence they are called radial forces. They are tensional forces. अब भी आते हैं इसमें. Whenever we have horizontal movement. Now imagine earth has a sphere. So if we have movement on any sphere like this. So tangent, I hope we understand. Tangent of a circle. Tangent of a circle, right? So whenever a circle is there, any line which touches just one point is called tangent, right? So once it is moving in this direction, each jerk will have along the tangent movement. That's why we call it horizontal movement is called tangential movement, like plate tectonics. The movement of plate is along the tangent of the circle, right? Similarly, if you see the radial forces, any vertical movement will be along the radius of the earth. Right? Imagine earth, center, whether it is up or down from anywhere, it will be moving along the radius of the earth. That's why the movement is also called radial movement. Look at here, anywhere we imagine, let's say this is center and here the vertical movement. So vertical movement means either this way or this way. So it is radius of the earth. So let's say suppose this land subsides. So if you imagine the globe as a circle, this is a flat area because the circle is very, very big. Right? We all know that the earth is roughly spherical in shape. So when it falls down, it will be falling along the radius of the earth. If you join the center, that will be radius of the earth. So it falls down, radial movement, moves upward again along the radius. So the movement is along the radius, movement is along the tangent. So that's why the compressive forces are also called tangential forces and the tensional forces are also called radial forces, or the vertical movement is also called radial movement.
So, but how it's along faults? It can be tangential also.
Along?
Along the faults, faults along movement.
Whenever you have tensional forces, that creates faults. Whenever we have compressive forces, that creates folds. That's a loose classification basically. Whenever we have movement of plates, so along the mid-oceanic ridges or the divergent boundary, we have the formation of faults also. But roughly whenever we see faults here, faults are basically the depressed areas or the outer boundary of that. So the portion is either elevated or depressed. So that movement will be along the fault. That movement will be along the fault. Here the movement is not along the fault. In the case of tangential movement or plate tectonics, the faults will be created, but the movement will not be along the faults. Movement will be along the tangent. So that's why when we say that horizontal movement, we call it tangential forces or tangential movement. Hope we are clear.